Thanks for tuning in to the Football Talk Squadron. I'm Dutch.
And I'm Pops.
And welcome to our next episode of our NFL season, week 6 we got going down. You know, the season, or this week started off a little interesting. The Jets cannon Salah a few days ago. I know me and you both felt it was a surprise. Why do you feel like it was a surprise from your end?
I mean, I think it might just be a little bit of, from behind the scenes. Maybe it's a culture issue. Like maybe the guys are finally fed up and just not gelling. I mean, we've had a lot of question marks lingering around why this defense is so bad when really they haven't lost anybody on that team, from last year. And maybe they're just fed up with the way that Saleh coaches. And, this was the decision Woody Johnson decided to go in. Obviously, there's always been that little bit of talk with the drama of Aaron Rodgers. Everybody wanted to make a big deal about that celebration hug, whatever it was. But we have known for Aaron, to, put on two different faces, so to speak, about, how things are really going versus, how things aren't going, in regards to the Packers not giving him the pieces he needed. And eventually he got to a point where he just put it on the table, said, hey, look, like this is the way it is. So we're not getting the full story, I don't believe. However, Woody Johnson came out and said, this was a decision that I made. I think it's crazy. Maybe he had higher expectations for this team because let's remember, even Adam Gase was able to finish a full season. So I don't know, what truly went on behind closed doors. But the fact that Saleh didn't even get to say goodbye to the team, I think is a little messed up in my opinion.
Yeah, it's one of those ones from my perspective that this is why the Jets are the Jets. It's why you haven't won a Super Bowl since Super Bowl 3. Is we look at the offseason for the Jets, and clearly we didn't really think defense was a problem. It is a problem. They still haven't gotten a deal done with Hassan Reddick, which is surprising with the level of defensive play. It makes me think the only reason they haven't got a deal done is they're trying to possibly trade for Devontae Adams or trying to go get someone. Because when I look at the offensive side, has the line been better in terms of not getting Aaron killed? Yeah. They can't really establish a run. Breece Hall's really been a no-show this year. The bigger part to me is outside of Garrett Wilson, dude, Jets wide receivers, trash. Like Lazard, he's a big dude. Don't get me wrong. Like he's everything you want in an NFL wide receiver, except for the ability to catch the football. Like he drops way too many. I mean, I was talking to Maul on the phone about it. It's like the Jets had an opportunity to beat the Vikings. Mm-hmm. Like Rodgers hit him. I know it was a difficult catch, but at the same time, if a ball hits your hands in the NFL, it's expected to be caught. You're getting paid millions. So it'd be interesting to see how this changes the Jets. In my opinion, it's really not going to change anything at all. Because until they go out and get somebody, I don't see any changes being made offensively that's going to make them more dynamic. I think that from a defensive scheme standpoint, maybe there's some more changes that can be made. But like you said, behind the scenes, you just don't know. You don't know what was really leading to it, but the Jets made it.
Well, and that's the thing too. There's been the speculation about the talk with demoting Hackett and all that kind of stuff. Like we saw Hackett as a head coach, like wasn't great. Like we saw him, last couple of years there in Green Bay, and yeah, they had marginal success. But like I would argue, it's because you had Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. Like how many times is Aaron audible at the line of scrimmage to Devontae to just run, pretty much cleared weird route, and I'm gonna put the ball somewhere and you're going to get it. Like we've seen that a lot, that kind of pickup style of play, backyard football, out of Aaron and Devontae. It's hard to truly measure how good LaFleur and Hackett were the last couple of years that Aaron was in Green Bay, And then, you kind of hit it too. The one other wide receiver that I thought would have production now that he's healthy is Mike Williams. Like you look at this guy, like him and Keenan Allen at the Chargers, like there was that duo was ridiculously tough to guard, for any defense, and he's been almost non-existent. Like, I'll be honest, up and besides watching the games, you forget that he's on the Jets, because his name's just not being called, his number's not being called. And, they definitely, I would say they need more than just Devontae Adams, in my personal opinion, to fix whatever's going on with that team.
For sure. It's, how do I even want to get into this? But this carousel of like coaching in the NFL, like we get into this cyclical cycle. Like Hackett's a prime example. It's like he was good at Green Bay, terrible at Denver, should be good at New York. It's not showing up. And what you point to is, I think, one of the truest ones is we fail to associate who they had as players and be like, was it the players having success or was it the OC? Like, I look at the Colts head coach, and it's like with Minshew, did a fantastic job last year. And it's funny because Flacco comes in. We know Flacco's good, but he looks good. And it's like we're having multiple success with different guys. I would sit back and go, I think Indy's got a really good offensive mind. He's able to take whatever's given to him and make it better. Hackett, on the other hand, you sit back and, yes, he had Russell Wilson, but it's like he needs another wide receiver. And what that really shows us is it's not really, Rodgers, or it's Hackett's not able to take the talent with the Jets and make it work. That's so
Exactly.
it's painful in the NFL because we get into the cycle. I know we could talk about with the Bears for decades of, it's like the Bears have always had a good defense. Like, I don't care who the defensive coordinator is. Clearly, whoever the scout is, whoever is picking these guys defensively, they have someone that's able to scout those guys out. Green Bay had it for years with wide receiver. I mean, think about it. Adams, Jordy Nelson, James Jones, Donald Driver, Greg Jennings, just guys that just kept coming out of the woodwork from, I don't want to say little known schools, but they were not, these are the first round ballot guys or first round guys. And they turned out to be someone that we look back on and go, man, why was that guy not drafted higher? The Jets, on the other hand, you sit back and you look at their draft history, and a lot of it deals with this. Like, did they score huge with Quinnen Williams? Absolutely. Amazing defensive player. They went out and traded for CJ Mosley. He's been great. Sauce, I would argue, has looked not as good as it did. Yeah. Pretty, which I will say the NFL rules have changed so much that it's not advantageous to play defense anymore. Like,
For sure.
it's a disadvantage. You're sort of guilty until proven innocent on the defensive side of the ball in the NFL, which sucks. We saw it in that Chiefs game with that pass interference late. That was just like, I get the likelihood of the Saints coming back was low, but for them to not throw that flag, I was just like, guys, like, you got to call it game straight. Even Aikman on TV was like, I guess the refs just want to go home because that was the only way that you call that what it was. So we got that, which was the big news in Sala, and then the other one we were laughing about just because never on my bingo card did I have turning on ESPN to hear Pat McAfee reading a Twitter response of forget the stadium fund, use that money to send Osama bin Watson to Pyongyang. That was, sums up Cleveland. I think the better point in conjunction was another stat I was sending you guys last night, which is wild. Deshaun Watson next year in 2025 has a $72 million cap hit, and in 2026 has a $72 million cap hit. Like, I hate to tell it to the Browns fans, but it don't get any better because his cap is so bad for the next 2 years that it's going to put them in a position. I don't know who they're going to be able to keep. And they're going to be a very young team because the only way they're going to be able to add guys is through the draft. Or just some guys that you're just last chance of NFL players. It's like, hey, we're paying you a minimum because we're just trying to see. The best chance for the Browns is trying to trade Watson which they're not going to get anything for him. What they're
No.
really just saying is, "Will you take that salary? Because we don't want it." I don't know what NFL team would take him. I mean, can you think of one that just pops to the top of your mind that you're like, that's a team that would take a chance on him?
I mean, the only team that I feel like would be desperate enough to do that would be Carolina. But I mean, they've made so many mistakes of themselves that I mean, it'd be like the classic stories, like, hey, let's bring Deshaun back to Carolina. Like, I feel like that would be Tepper's reasoning in his head. We're going to sell jerseys, just like why we pick Leggett, versus anybody else in the draft with our first pick, to bring him back. But I
I
I
think you're
don't
onto
think.
something there.
Yeah, I mean, I
No,
I
think
would.
about it. Like they're
Yeah.
not going to have. They may have a. At the end of the year, they're probably going to compete for the number one draft pick. But it's like,
Yep.
do you want Beck or do you want Watson? You
Mm-hmm.
know, or do you want Shador Sanders? Who do you want out of this? I would argue there's not this like Caleb Williams, C.J. Stroud, those type. Even a Jaden Daniels. Like I don't see the Heisman Trophy winner being at the top of this year's draft. I
Or
think
just being
right
a
now,
or just being a quarterback this year.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's what I was about to say. It's probably going to be Boise State's running back because my man's been going
Unreal.
off,
Video
ripping.
game. Rookie
Yeah,
mode.
rookie mode in NCAA for sure. He is. How do you win a Heisman on your freshman campaign? Because that's what he's doing. Um, but for Cleveland, you sit back and you look at him, and I had him number one in the division. It was just
Same.
because you sit back and you look at the roster, you're like, okay, they go get Judy, which I get. He hadn't really produced, but they have Cooper, they have a tight end and
Njoku.
Njoku.
Yeah.
They got a good defense, like
Nick
all
Chubb.
these things. And yeah, Nick Chubb isn't back yet, but it was one of those ones that you sat back and you looked at how they played at the end of last year with Flacco, and now you come out and you're just like, yeah, bless. Like you should have just kept Flacco. Like, but they can't. They can't do anything on Watson because no one wants to take that money. Which
And I'd argue, we're in a worse situation than a Danny Dimes situation. Like, at least Danny Dimes seems to be a talent issue. Like, here with Watson, it just purely seems like he just got paid and he's like, I'm untouchable. Like, I don't have to study. I don't have to do anything. Like, it's already came out that the culture around, in the locker room is that this guy is worthless to us. Like he's not a leader. He's not wanting to do anything for the team. I mean, Jameis is the one that's hyping him up before every single game, and so there's a lot of question marks about the character of Deshaun Watson. And honestly, like it shows, when you used to be, a Pro Bowl quarterback, leading the Texans to the playoffs, and we can't even get 100 yards passing out of you. Like there's obviously there's not that much of a drop off in my opinion, to put up those types of stats after who you have been in years previous. And I just think he's just taking the money and running. And that's a lot of the reason why I think we're not going to see Jameis on the field is because they can't afford to just let $70 million a year sit on the bench. You know?
100%. Because I didn't even put that piece together, but once you sit him, you're not. I doubt anyone's going to take him.
Yeah.
You're hoping that maybe at the trade deadline, Carolina's so desperate that they're like, we'll take him and we'll take him for a 7th round pick, and that way we can use our number one pick on other positions next year.
Mm-hmm.
But bad day in Cleveland. But with that, we'll get into it. Thursday night, 49ers at the Seahawks. Right now, San Francisco is -3.5. Seahawks come out, lose to Danny Dimes and a neighborless
Yeah.
Giants. 49ers also come off a loss, give up another late lead. They lose to the Rams a few weeks ago, up by, I think, 14. Then they're up on the Cardinals. Let the Cardinals come all the way back. So you got two teams coming off pretty bad losses. The surprising thing is the Niners are sitting at 2-3. Seattle sitting at 3-2. What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah. I think that the 49ers are going to be the team that bounces back in this game, coming off of a loss. I think we've talked about it in just off the script, and I truly believe, like I texted you guys last week, I think, and I said, is the NFC West trash this year? Like, are they just that much in a deficit of, just being able to put it together. It's not a matter of talent. Like every team out there has talent in some regard on their team. But if you would have told me that the Rams were going to be 1-4 to start the season, I would have called you crazy. Like what they did last year, when Cup went down and Puka stepped up. I understand both guys are hurt right now, but you would have never thought, that they would be 1-4 right now as we speak. And they got boat raced by the Cardinals. The Cardinals, started. They've only got 2 wins because they beat the 49ers this past week. But all these almost 500, slightly below 500 out of the NFC West, there's just a lot of question marks that I don't think we had when we went into our predictions episode earlier this season. Now, to get back to the game itself, I mean, Geno's putting up 400 yards a game, 300 plus in the air, and Kenneth Walker's running for another 100 plus. Like, you want to know where are the pieces of the puzzle not falling. And I think it's just a matter of scoring and keeping keeping your hands on the ball. I will say that defensive line for the Giants, Dexter Lawrence had one heck of a game for the New York Giants against the Seahawks last Sunday. So that might be a problem. I think, if the trenches, you say it all the time, but the game's won in the trenches. And I mean, if Bosa and those guys are able to get and Leonard Floyd are able to get Geno, I think the 49ers are going to be able to bounce back and, be able to cover this weekend or tomorrow, actually.
For me, the 49ers, it's all about, does Ayuk show up? He showed up in the first half against the Cardinals, which he had not been there this whole
All
season up
season.
until last game. Darius Slayton went off against Seattle. He had to whip neighbors out. He was the guy that filled that role. You sit back and you look at the 49ers offense and you say, if the Giants can put up points, we should be able to put up points. We got Debo. We still have Kittle. We've got Ayuk. We have Jawan Jennings. Mason's been running well. I sit back and I look at the other side. Seattle should have won the game. If you just
For
could
sure.
not get a field goal blocked and then returned on you, if you make it, you leave it in Danny Dimes' hands with a minute to go to try to win the game. Seattle probably comes out victorious, I'd say 9 times out of 10 in that scenario, but they couldn't get that done. The good thing is for Seattle, it's at home. Seattle is a tough place to play. This has always been the NFC West. Like, I don't care how bad the teams are, the game should be good because they always play one another very competitively inside that division. But if you made me pick, I'm going to go San Francisco just because I trust them more on the defensive side of the football than I do Seattle's defense just right now.
Yeah, and I understand that, Jordan Mason has been playing phenomenal, for a backup role so far this season. But I think we're really starting to see the shortcomings of this offense without C-Mac. Like, you got C-Mac in the backfield, you have to worry about so much more than, just making Purdy beat you. But now you got, Mason in the backfield. I think that's where he still wins because they're able to lax up a little bit and, worry more about the pass. But I mean, we're seeing it come true. I mean, the team's under 500 to start out the year.
This is why I asked the question of, is this the best that you're ever going to see out of Purdy? You think about all the talent that he had around him, and now that more of the emphasis is put upon him to win the games, he's unable to deliver even with the lead, which I get the defense is ultimately the, who gives up the points, but it doesn't help when your offense can't keep control of the football. You got to be able to give your defense a break, and if the defense is able to stop them, or you're up by 2 scores, if you just keep scoring, they ain't winning. Like, can't tie it up if you keep scoring. They can't get it done, which is going to lead to some real big discussions at the end of the year if it keeps going south for the Niners. Of what do you do? Do you pay Purdy or do you pay these other guys? Because you got a lot of the biggest mistake the Niners made was this past offseason, paying Ayuk.
Yeah, 100%.
He's clearly not. He's getting way overpaid. No one would touch him now after the season that he's had. I get that he had a good week last week, but from a standpoint of a guy, what you always fear is I hand this dude a bag and then he stops playing. That's what you got out of Ayuk. And until he shows it otherwise, like, the Niners dug themselves a hole because now you paid him and you got Kittle coming up on contract. You got Purdy coming up on contract.
Debo.
Debo. All these guys are coming up. Someone's got to go. Who are they going to make that choice with? No clue. No clue. And they're in a difficult situation. Then for you, question what jersey you're going to wear against the Jaguars for the game in London. I want to see if you're going to test another jersey. I want you to explain it, though, since we're the only two. Me, you, and Maul are the only ones that know about this.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've been running. I was running the Buckus jersey, for the defense was playing hard last couple of weeks. So then I thought I would change it up. And last weekend, Swift had a good game. Who did we just beat? Not Carolina the week before.
The Rams.
The Rams. That's right. We saw, hey, Swift was finally able to get involved on this offense in one game. Like he'd been absolutely quiet the first 2 games of the season. And you're just like, well, let's see, is this going to be our first 3 games, of the season? And it's like, when are we going to see this happen? And, we saw in the reports that they had the talk with Shane Waldron, all the captains said, hey, coach us harder. Like, let's get this figured out because something needs to work. And last 2 weeks it's been working. So last Sunday I wore the Walter Payton jersey, just hoping that Swift would go off again, give him a little sweetness energy. And I mean, it worked. I mean, the guy had over 100 scrimmage yards. Really should have had 2 touchdowns. They put in Roschon to get the touchdowns. Swift ended up getting one, but I think he should have got the one where he literally led the whole entire drive and put them in scoring position. Caveat, I think I'll have to run it back and put the Peyton jersey back on. This week against the Jaguars. Man, I think this is going to be a good test for Caleb. Obviously, we beat the Rams. There was some discussion there. I think that had a lot to do with the defense. The offense was able to move the ball that game, but really our defense stepped up there. Last week, I think, was the tune-up game. It was Florida State playing Appalachian State, just get to beat the living crap out of them. That was the game that Caleb needed to get his feet underneath him and truly show us what he has in the tank. And he's got back-to-back 300-yard games. So I think the offense is in a good position going into this test against the Jaguars, and they're already in London. So even though it might be a home game for the Jaguars since they play over there the most, I'm thinking that the Bears are going to win. But I think it's going to be a close game. I mean, Jaguars just gave Houston a run for their money, and if it wasn't for C.J. Stroud, they probably would have won that game. So we'll see. I'm pretty pumped. Might have to stay home from church to watch the game.
I hope you just didn't doom the Bears by comparing them to Florida State, especially with the year that Florida
this year. Yeah.
For me, the Bears, it's a good test against a better defensive line, which I get. The Jags they're 1-4. They still have Josh Allen. They still have Trevon Walker, the first overall pick a few years back from Georgia. They have some good players on the defensive side. For the Bears, it's going to come down to their defense yet again. They should have a field day with T-Law. The Jags have looked atrocious. ETN, I was just talking about Maul because Maul had the unfortunateness of drafting ETN high in his fantasy draft, and the dude is one step above, I think, Dow and Hunt this year. He's not playing well.
Well, and he's hurt.
Yeah. So you look at the Jags and you look at that offense. Brian Thomas looks good. He had a really long catch for 6 last week. But from the standpoint of who do I think is going to get you said it. If they had fumbled that loss to the Colts, Doug Peterson was out the door, which I do feel like we're just counting the days down until the next loss. Every single loss is getting Doug Peterson one step closer to getting canned.
Hey,
I wouldn't be.
Dude, there'd be 2 weeks back to back. There was that meme of Saleh trying to get on the jet going home from London.
Oh, dude, that was hilarious.
If we get Doug Peterson fired this week, like he'd be in the same boat, trying to beg his way back onto the jet to go back to the States.
I think they'll give Peterson more rope just because it's Jacksonville, and I can see them waiting until they're eliminated from playoff contention before making that type of move. I think the reason the Jets did it is the Jets are like, hey, uh, I don't have long with Rodgers. I've got this season. I've got maybe next season, but you never know what that den of darkness is going to make Aaron Rodgers decide next year. So I can see them giving Doug Peterson a little bit extra long of a leash in terms of allowing him to compete until we know that you can't make the playoffs this year and then they can him. But the Bears showed up first in London, which should spell a victory for the Bears. So we'll get to test that theory of whoever usually shows up to London first is the victorious. And Chicago is -2.5 for the game. Then after the London games, we've got Packers, Cardinals. Right now, Green Bay's -5. This one's tricky because Love
Which
hasn't
which Cardinals team's going to show up?
exactly, yeah, and Love hasn't looked amazing. They've especially against the Vikings. Yes, they came back. They made it close. They also got down by 28. The Cardinals have looked better. I want to throw this out there. If you could redo the draft, Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't going as the first overall wide receiver. It's
No.
Neighbors a
Yes.
mile. It really is starting to hot. He doesn't have this tremendous breakaway speed that Neighbors has and some of the it's just not showing up in Arizona, which I get. It's his first year, but for a rookie wide receiver, he has not been showing up like Neighbors has. Brian Thomas has even looked good at points. Like there's other guys that have shown up more and made more of an impact. What are your thoughts with that? Why do you not think that we're seeing the production out of Harrison Jr. that we were sort of expecting to see?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the other caveat, like, you know, are you trying to leave open a age, Kirk on the other side, like allowing him to run free? I truly don't have answers because I mean we see what he did against the Rams. He had Marvin or Randy Moss esque start to that game. He had 3 catches over 100 plus yards and 2 tutties. He didn't have the 3 catches for 3 touchdowns, but we saw that electric start, and you're like, okay, maybe they finally found a way to use them. And then we've been radio silent for the most part for the last couple of weeks. The guy's not. He's just not. He's not playing to the potential that Malik Neighbors is, and I would honestly be surprised because I would go out to say the Cardinals are a better rounded team than the New York Giants are at this current time. Like if we put them on a field together, I think the Giants win or the Cardinals win. And so it amazes me, that Daniel Dimes can get a ball to Malik Neighbors, but not Kyler getting the ball to Marvin Harrison. So I truly don't know. If we had to redraft, though, I think it's clear vote that Malik Neighbors is out in front. The biggest thing stopping Malik Neighbors is getting hurt because he's always getting the ball.
Yeah, in this game, it makes it even harder for Marvin Harrison Jr. The Packers have a good defense, which it's starting to look like everyone in the NFC North has a pretty good defense. I would say that if you had to rank them, it'd be a tie between right now the Vikings and the Bears. I'd have the Packers in at 3, and then I'd have the Lions in at 4th. In terms of defensive rankings, it's really splitting hairs with the Vikings. If I had to give someone an edge, I'd probably give the Vikings just because they're undefeated, which I get is a little bit more on the offensive side. But from a defensive side, man, everyone in the NFC North looks good. It should be a really good test for Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray going against a secondary minded team in Green Bay. That's why Green Bay's favored, in my opinion. We'll see. But yeah, give me the Pack against Arizona.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Not a lot of people are really talking about it, but the NFC North right now is the only division where every team has a winning record. Tell me the last time that was. I mean, even excluding the Bears, I mean, you go back all the way to the Barry Sanders days with Detroit Lions having a winning record. I think we've seen the improvement so far to begin this season, and obviously here in a couple of weeks they're going to start getting to beat up on each other.
For sure. Another rivalry game that we're going into in division. Colts at the Titans. Right now, Colts -1. I haven't heard anything about Richardson. I'm guessing that Flacco's still starting. Everyone should be favored against the Titans as long as Will Levis is starting.
Gosh.
Which last week, I'm interested to see now if if Levis comes out and struggles, how short is the leash? Because they have a capable backup in Mason Rudolph sitting there, who's been a starter at one point for Pittsburgh. He didn't look bad against the Jets. I'd argue he looked better than Levis did. Levis threw that interception to that defensive lineman for the Dolphins, and you sit back and you were like, "What?" In him being like, "I didn't see him," I wanted to be like, "Did you have your eyes closed? Like, how did you not see him?" The Titans should bench Levis.
100%.
There's nothing to lose with benching him. He's cost you multiple games this season. I'm unsure why that hasn't happened yet. But if there's a game that I can see him getting benched the second he starts to make a mistake, it will be this one. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the thing about it was this is the prime example that we talk about, on the college episode, is Will Levis was Mel Kiper's guy. Like he was going to be the steal of the draft, and all that he is right now is the steal of the internet. Like every week we're getting a new meme of some terrible play because he's just not taking care of the ball, and he's doing these stupid plays to try to keep a play alive that end up being turnovers. And Mason Rudolph has the experience to take care of the ball. Like just take the sack. We can go live, for a second and long, or whatever, down and further distance to go, versus turning the ball over and giving the other team, great field position. So, in my personal opinion, I think Will Levis needs to be benched. Uh, I think the sad part is this probably be the demise of Will Levis, from what we've seen this season. And it sucks because, I mean, just last year he was a rookie and, guys were like, well, he's kind of 50-50 on who he's going to be. And I would say on the backside, he's more below average, now that he's got the starting role and calling all the shots. So, yeah. And then on the flip side with Indiana, man, or Indianapolis, AR's got to learn how to slide. Like that's the biggest piece. This kid, I think it's his game play of style, like his style of play. Like this dude is so used to just being out physical with with the defenders. And he's just not able to do that anymore because you're playing in the top of the top. So this dude's lowering that shoulder and he's getting popped right back. So personally, AR needs to learn how to slide. They need to buy those baseball sliding mats to teach this dude. Here's how you do it. Like, don't try to run this guy over. You're going to end up like Cam Newton, and your shoulder's going to be blown out in 2 seasons, and you're not going to be able to throw the ball over 15 yards. So, the guy's got a cannon. He's got a lot of talent, but I would argue right now Joe Flacco is playing better football than AR, and it's just purely due to experience. I mean that's all that it is. If I was Shane Steichen, I would leave Flacco in and have AR learn until Flacco starts struggling. Like there's no reason right now. Flacco put up almost 400 yards. I think it was like 369 last week, and he took care of the ball. Why would you change that up? That's fantastic production out of your quarterback. You can't ask for more. And guess what? He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I'd argue on the back of a fantastic defense, but he's still been there. He's got that experience. He played against all the greats. Like, what better opportunity for AR to learn than just throwing them, to the wolves?
100%. Speaking of backups, Texans at the Patriots, Drake May's first start. How do you see that unfolding?
I think it's going to be a lot like the Caleb Williams game against the Bears. Like D'Amico's just going to come at Drake May with all that he's got. Cover zero blitzes, just all day. I'm bringing the house. You got man to man. Are you going to get the ball off? Like I could see that really being the game plan because I mean you saw it against the Bears. Like 60% of every down or of the whole entire game, Caleb Williams was under duress. So you're telling me every other snap, I'm about to die. Like, I think that's going to be the same mentality that I would have if I was D'Amico. And then on offense, yeah, good luck. Like, yes, Nico Collins just went to the IR, so he's out, long term now. But we still got Tank Dell. We've still got Mixon coming back. And we've got Stephon Diggs.
And Dalton Schultz. Like,
yeah,
the offense is still ticking.
Exactly. So I don't see this being much of a competition. The only thing that the Patriots offense has going for him is Ramondre Stevenson when he can hold on to the football. So, yeah, I think the Houston Texans are going to win this game easily as long as Drake May has the jitters.
Which that's how I would approach the game if I was D'Amico Ryans. Is I would just say if one thing's not going to beat us today, it's going to be Ramondre Stevenson. We're going to shut down the run. We will commit extra guys to the run, even if it means leaving guys one on one on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Because if someone's going to beat us today, it's going to have to be a brand new rookie QB in his first start. And the odds of that happening are tremendously low. Caleb Williams was the first guy to win his first rookie start.
Ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
In like 20 years?
Yeah. Been a long time. So I doubt, based upon what I've seen out of the Patriots, it will take a terrible game from CJ Stroud in that offense combined with Drake May having a really sort of a performance of a lifetime to come out for an opening start to upset the Texans. I'm with you. Give me the Texans big.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much of an impact it is. I mean, you're losing a team captain, but on the Patriots side, they just lost Jabril Peppers, to whatever fight he got into, drug fueled rage, whatever. Apparently cocaine was involved. Like that
wasn't
dude's
a fight. It was it was an
tried to kill
arrest.
somebody. Yeah, he tried killing somebody. What it sounded like, strangulation, all that kind of stuff. But anyways, all that to say, they've lost a defensive leader, on the defense. And I mean, those guys, those culture type dudes being out, like it has a difference. They don't have somebody to hold them accountable out there on the field. So I think they're going to be the Patriots team we've seen. They just came off of a 15-10 loss to the Dolphins. I mean, one of the worst games I've watched in a long time, and they're just not playing good football. Where the Texans are, catching their groove and taking off. I mean, they're 4-1.
Missed a golden opportunity to call it him having his Aaron Hernandez moment.
Wolf.
Too
soon.
Another backup, possibly getting a start because they haven't officially ruled Carr out against the Bucs, but yet the Bucs going down the Saints. I've seen a lot of people chattering that this is the time to see Spencer Rattler, which I sit back and I would actually prefer to see. This is like the perfect game to throw him in. Could it be demoralizing? Could they get the break speed off him? Yes. Do I think it would be a great? Let's see what you got. Let's put some plays in. Let's try to see if I can get something out of you, which I go back to a few years ago when they played Tennessee. Tennessee's undefeated. They go to South Carolina, and Rattler, you watch that game.
Yeah.
Dude, that dude was throwing it through a cornhole board 50 yards away, slinging it. It's not that I like the Saints to win the game with a backup. It wouldn't surprise me to see them win with a backup, just because the Saints typically have a good defense. It's a rivalry game between the Bucs. I don't know what Bucs team I'm going to get. Am I going to get the team that beat the brakes off of the Eagles? Am I going to get the team that beat the Lions? Yeah, or am I going to get the team that lost to the Broncos? Like, I don't know what team I'm going to get. I'm going to get the team that choked against Atlanta on Thursday night and let Cousins throw for over 500 yards on offense. Like, if there's one thing about the Saints, they have a deep threat. So they have the ability to score. The crazy thing with the Saints is we went after the first 2 weeks. I saw this great meme. I'm sure you probably saw it too. These dudes are like sitting there dying laughing. And it's like us remembering that we had Derek Carr in the MVP conversation after week 2 and how quickly that evaporated. The Saints are still a good team. You look at their losses, they're all close. It's not like the Saints have gotten blown out. They lose the Eagles in a close one. They lose to the Falcons in a close one, of which they had an interception return for a touchdown and a punt fumbled that got recovered in the end zone. They didn't give up an offensive touchdown that whole game. Yep. And then last game, Carr goes down. Carr didn't play well. Yet again, Spagnuolo is calling up a great game plan and really limited New Orleans. And if they get on the goal line, you know what I want to see? I want to see that defensive tackle get the football again, because that man had some wheels.
Yeah, dog. He was moving.
I really, I guess it was Worthy that tried to tackle him. He got away. I was like, dude, if there's nothing but green grass in front of this man is gone, because that dude could fly. Yep. Which is funny because even Aitman was like, no, this dude's for sure played running back at some time, and they started digging and found out,
And
yep, he
sure
was a
enough,
running
yes,
back
he
in high
did.
school.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Well, and he had the third. They stat tracked it. It was like the LeBron stat. He was the third fastest D lineman in the last 20 years in that short burst.
yeah. It, I like the I like what the Saints have. They have in it. It doesn't help the Saints that what happened after week 2 that no one's really talking about. Taysom Hill being out. He's really that Swiss Army knife. If you want to put it in other terms, he's more than Wes Welker was to Tom Brady or
Mm-hmm.
Manning during that year. He's more than just that slot guy because you can line him up in the slot. You can put him at quarterback. You can put him at quarterback for the Wildcat. You can put him at running back. You put him at tight end. Having a guy that you're able to manipulate into so many different positions to really sort of test the defense in different ways, not a lot of teams have that. And it makes them dangerous. It will just really depend, can they get from an offensive standpoint a guy to sling the football. We'll find out who they end up starting
Yeah, and
on
that was
Sunday.
going. Yeah, and that was going to be my piece too. You know, like you wish that Taysom could go back into a time machine and say, "Hey, Tim, I promise you it's going to work out if you try to play tight end and you try to play, running back and everything." Because Tebow would probably had, a Taysom Hill like career had he listened, to everybody saying, "Hey, just try it out." We would do all this other crazy stuff, kind of like what you did in college. But back to the game, with Taysom Hill being gone, I think obviously the only option is Spencer Rattler for these guys. And I think that's going to be who we see. We'll probably put more load on Alvin Kamara, which, for the most part, Todd Bowles knows how to call a defense. He's a defensive minded guy. The Bucks defense has always been primarily solid. So the real question is, once they stop that, it goes right back to that Drake May start. Like you got to let the rookie quarterback try to beat us, and I just don't see that happening. I would assume, that the Bucks are going to be pretty upset, with the loss that they were just handed. I honestly thought the Buccaneers had the game, and I went to bed, and then I turned it on. I was like, "What? They lost? Like how did they blow it there in game?" I just don't see that happening 2 weeks in a row. So I see the Buccaneers offense continuing to roll. I mean, there's just too many pieces, especially, between Godwin, between Evans, just the production that those guys still continue to put up, year after year. And, I mean, they got a pretty decent, running back in the backfield as well. Irvin right now, averaging over 5 yards a carry, getting most of the work. So, I think the Buccaneers are the better team, especially without Derek Carr for the Saints.
Next game up, we've got the Browns, who we know are atrocious, going against the Eagles, which by all means of this year have underperformed. Hurts looks bad.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't help that AJ Brown's out. But from a standpoint of here's a team that we really thought offensively would have most of its issues resolved with bringing Saquon in, my biggest part to this whole Eagles drama is if you're going to bring in Saquon and pay him, at
Use
least
them.
use him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I am so sick of this RPO garbage that I'm like, no, what the Eagles need to develop is sort of what the Ravens have done with Henry. Is we're done with the RPO garbage. We're going to run downhill with Henry, and we need to throw, we'll throw, but we are going to commit to using this guy that we brought in who we know can run the football to let him do his job. Because Saquon, every single time he touches it, is gaining like 5 yards carry.
Mm-hmm.
But he's going off. This is a big game for the Eagles because the Browns are terrible. Terrible. If the Eagles somehow blow this game, you just sort of sit back and you look, it doesn't get any easier for the Eagles going forward because they have you sit back, you look at the what you thought was a bad NFC East, but now with Washington, because after this they go to New York, they go to Cincinnati, Jacksonville, but then they get Dallas, Washington, the Rams, Baltimore, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Washington, Dallas, New York. The Eagles haven't played well, and we know that whoever wins the division the previous year is unlikely to win again. Sorry, Dallas. It's looking like the Commanders' division win
For sure.
because the Commanders' offense is absolutely lighting up the NFL. Like, Jaden Daniels isn't just a front runner for rookie of the year right now. He is beginning to gain a lot of traction for possibly NFL MVP with the type of season he's having just through the first 5 weeks of the season. And you look at the Eagles and you go, where is that type of production? I don't see it. And this is a game where, by all means, the Eagles are favorite. They're the largest Vegas favorite by -9. But I ain't confident if I'm picking the Eagles this week. Thoughts?
No, and I agree because also a missing piece of the puzzle, Lane Johnson, captain, he's out too. So you're already going to have a struggle in the run game. Against a pretty decent defensive line. I mean, let's not forget we've got the defensive player of the year lining up, for 70-80% of the plays, out of Myles Garrett. So this could be, one of those games where the Eagles offense is just unable to do anything. And, they just get lucky with the defensive turnover or, one of those punt returns, any one of those wild scenarios where a team gets upset that had no business losing the game. And the Eagles, I would say, would be on upset alert. Now, do I think it happens like that? No. Just purely based on how terrible the Browns' offense is. And, man, you just look at all those weapons. I would say this game would be a lot closer if we knew that Jameis Winston was going to be starting. Like at least we'd have some hope. We'd be like, hey, this defense might be motivated again because they've got a new quarterback. They know that they've got a quarterback that'll sling it. Um, I don't have enough faith in the Browns to say that the Eagles won't cover, but it will be interesting to see how Jalen looks without his top two guys. I mean, he's got Goddard, but that's it. Like, are you going to throw it to Saquon out of the backfield every time? There's just too many questions on this offense. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, their secondaries look pretty terrible. I mean, CJ GJ was, talking all the trash against Mike Evans. Mike Evans puts up over 100 yards on him, like didn't even look good. Wasn't even within 5 yards of Mike Evans, on a couple of instances. So I think Vic Fangio is on the hot seat right now because they're not firing Sirianni for whatever reason. But I think really the bigger issue lies with, Nick Sirianni and putting this team in a good position to win football games.
100%. Then game of the week, in my opinion, Commanders at Ravens. Ravens -6.5, which is a little surprising. I'm guessing that they just sort of sit back and are going hardball with that defense, are going to show Daniels some different stuff. The kids still through 5 weeks, they're 4-1, and it is the Commanders offense that we always thought they were capable of with Scary Terry and the other guys. They're showing it. They're showing it. And Cliff Kingsbury, hats off to him, didn't do as hot as many thought he would as Arizona's coach with Kyler Murray. But my man is killing it right now with Jaden Daniels, and Dan Quinn on the other side has gotten that defense to perform at the level that we thought they should have for the past few years. What are your thoughts about this game? Especially, can they get a big win against, the reigning AFC, conference runner up next to the Chiefs of the Ravens?
Yeah, this is going to be obviously be Jaden Daniels' test into the NFL. Like we have seen week after week, all these good things. And don't get me wrong, he's doing great things. Like he's got a 77% completion rating right now. He's thrown for almost 1,200 yards, and they're able to run the ball as well. I mean, their running back core almost has 1,000 yards rushing through 5 games too. Like this offense is absolutely cooking. I do see this is where Jaden Daniels is going to find his first week of struggle. You're going into Baltimore. Baltimore's defense is always good. Baltimore has been playing pretty decent. I would say that there were some ups and downs of that Bengals game, but the week before that, they blew the brakes off of the Bills. I think the Ravens are able to find their identity now through how to handle Derrick Henry coming out of the backfield. It's going to be a tough matchup for sure, but I don't see the 6.5 that you're talking about. I could see the Commanders keeping it within that for sure. I just don't think that they're going to be able to win the game against the Ravens.
Be a great game. Next up, Chargers coming off a bye, going to the Broncos. You have a Broncos team that defensively is competing with, you look at the Bears, the Vikings, and a few other teams as one of the best defenses in the league. Patrick Surtain has sort of cemented himself right now as the number one corner in the league. Chargers, on the other hand, don't really throw the football. They have really committed to run the football, which is surprising. I saw the over under for Justin Herbert in terms of yards this week is 180, which
Well,
if you had said that 2 years ago, I'd been like, yeah, give
you're
me the
high.
over. Yeah,
Yeah.
what's going on? So part of that is just the Chargers. Yes, they have Lad McConkey. They have the wide receiver that can't catch from TCU. His name's escaping me. Quentin
Palmer.
Johnson.
Or Quincy Johnson.
Um, but the Chargers aren't a lethal. They're a good team. They're a good team, but I don't find the Chargers are lethal. The Chargers are -3, and I think a lot of that goes to Harbaugh. But for me, I'm gonna take the Broncos this game. I'm having a hard time doubting Denver based upon how well their defense plays. What are your keys to the game?
Yeah, looking at it right now, I mean, they've only got 1,100 yards of offense for the Chargers, and a team, being led with this guy that we've talked about being elite talent since the moment he got into the NFL, out of Justin Herbert. Like, you're really surprised that Jaden Daniels has already thrown for 1,100 yards. He's thrown for more total offense than your team combined. And I mean, looking at Herbert's stats, he's averaging 144 yards per game. I mean, it's just like you said, like that number is astronomically low for him. And maybe Harbaugh's trying to do the run offense style that he had at Michigan, but I don't think that's their identity. Like how are you going to waste Herbert's talent by just handing the ball off, uh, you know, to J.K. Dobbins every single down? I don't understand. I don't understand that. On the defensive side, go figure. Joey Bosa's hurt this week. So they're down a player on that line, and I'll be honest. I do see that Denver gets another win this week, just purely based upon their defense. I mean, Bo Nix is taking care of the ball. I will say that he's been able to make some pretty good plays. Obviously, he's thrown for almost 1,000 yards, so he's taking care of the ball. He's throwing for over 60% completion percentage right now. Uh, I think it's their game to lose. I mean, playing there, it's not Mile High anymore, but playing at Mile High this weekend uh, gives them the advantage, especially for that defense right now.
Be a great game. Then you have two teams that it will. This is the week. If there's going to be a week that I think we see Russell Wilson possibly enter the picture of
This week,
Steelers at Raiders. The announcers are really leaning into it, which I was like, do you guys have information that we don't have? Because they were really starting to imply that in either a week or 2 weeks, you're going to see Russell Wilson,
yeah,
which I go back to what Maul was talking about, sort of the perfect scenario that Russell's hurt. We're going to put Fields in. Fields is looking good. But as the past few weeks, he loses to Indy, loses to Dallas. He's not running the ball as efficiently as he was. The passing, miscues of Fields that we saw pretty much his entire career with the Bears is starting to show back up. I think that if he goes out and lays an egg against the Raiders, who are not a good football team right now, it's Russell Wilson's show going into the next week, if not this week, depending on when is Russell cleared to play. Thoughts?
yeah. I do still see Pittsburgh being able to win this game. As far as what they're talking about with Russell Wilson, it's starting to cause a drama, I think, that ESPN wants to create. And like this is the part that I hate so much about where we're at in the world today. We didn't care about drama in sports, when I was growing up. Like you just told the facts. Here's the team. This guy's playing or he's not. It's not, oh, well, we got Russell Wilson, a 10-time Pro Bowler, blah, 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 Super Bowl champion sitting on the sideline behind this. Like we just create these narratives to build more views, I guess, for lack of better words. But they were talking this past week of how Russell Wilson's full up gear helmet on the sideline, standing right next to Mike T, just ready to go get in the game at a moment's notice. And it's just like, we're just driving this narrative that I think there will come a point where it's like, all right, let's see what Russ has. Like we have hit that point in the season where our offense is not producing like it was. Fields' true colors are coming out, whatever it may be. I just don't see it being this week. They finally put Christian Wilkins on the IR, so he's done for at least a month. So he's going down long term. Max Crosby is still Max Crosby, but the rest of that team is non-existent. We did see them get lucky against the Ravens early on in the season, but we could also argue that the Ravens didn't have an identity or know how to properly utilize Henry that we've seen in these later weeks happen. Raiders almost lost to the Browns. Like, I'm sorry, but you almost lost to a dude who threw 90 yards against you.
Raiders lost to the Panthers.
And they lost to the Panthers. Like, we were literally like, this would be the most Raider thing to happen. I think Maul said it was like, this would be the most Raiders things to happen to go this week and lose to the Panthers. Sure enough, what do they do? And also, Aiden O'Connell is now starting. I don't know if you saw that news. Devontae's out. He said, I'm done, which we kind of already knew because he wants to get out and all that stuff, but he's not playing this weekend. Aiden O'Connell gets to start. I don't see the Raiders winning this week. As far as Fields and the Russell swap, kind of is what it is. I feel like they're kind of similar styles of play. Obviously, Wilson's probably a little more accurate. Fields is a little quicker. You can give and take both directions as far as, kind of being the same guy.
The issue with Wilson is until he comes into a game and shows anything like he was in Seattle,
True.
he can kick rocks.
Yes.
Like, this idea that he's just going to enter the game and be this Seattle quarterback yet again.
It's not there.
It's not there. And at the end of the day, he hasn't played at all full speed. This idea that he's just going to come in without missing a beat, not look rusty, not have that, timing's going to be perfect. All this stuff is going to be perfect. Whenever he does come into the game, and that's why I think it's only if they're down a lot will he come in, because it's sort of one of those ones where they will accept the loss at that point by being like, hey, we're just now trying to get him warmed up for next week by giving him some game action because this game's already out of hand. But this idea that he's just going to come in and start and Pittsburgh's going to take off, I don't see it. It Fields gives them the advantage with the legs, which Russell hasn't had in years. Even at the tail end of Seattle, he wasn't that.
For sure. Yeah.
So, and you look at Pittsburgh, it's like outside of Pickens and Freiermuth and Najee, they really don't have another wide receiver. That's why they were trying to trade for Ayuk. They're also one of the bigger names out there that's not on Devontae's list of getting traded too,
but they need him.
But they need him, and that they would pay him, and he would look good in that black and gold. We'll see.
And it's so funny too, because the guys that they've got on their roster right now at wide receiver, Van Jefferson, decent success at the Rams. He also had Matt Stafford. Roman Wilson. Really haven't seen a whole lot out of him besides, hey, he won a national championship at Michigan. Like there's not, like you said, there's not much that is backing up behind Pickens, without a doubt.
Next big game. Lions at the Cowboys. We're going to go back to the terrible, Dan Skipper rubbing his shirt saying I'm eligible, them absolutely butchering that call, and the Cowboys stealing a win. This is interesting to me. Does Lawrence play? Does Parsons play? Who's on Dallas's defense? We know what we're going to get out of Dallas's offense. It's going to be throw, baby, throw, because they really don't have a run game. I get that Dowd looked a little bit better against the Steelers. He did catch a touchdown, but from the standpoint of the Dallas having a running game, they don't have it. The Lions, on the other hand, having Parsons and Lawrence out, I'd sit back and I go, that Detroit should put up some points this game against that Cowboys defense. But it just has me, I don't know about you, I can't fully trust Detroit this season. I was pulling for them a lot last year, and after they beat the Chiefs week 1, I was starting to buy in. I've yet to buy in just because the guys that they went out and drafted defensively, especially Darren Arnold, every time I turn around, my man's getting flagged.
Oh.
So I have a hard time with with the Lions this game just because of the defensive struggles they've had, especially with the flags going against a pass happy Dallas offense. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Lawrence is not on the injury report for this week. Micah is still questionable, but Lawrence is back. So at least they've got one piece to the puzzle there on that defensive line. Really, I agree with what you're saying. The biggest piece is how is Dak going to pass against this team? And I think it's becoming more and more evident that they didn't really fix the secondary. Like, yes, we went out and drafted the pieces to the puzzle, but I don't think those guys are showing up to be who they wanted them to be. You already mentioned it. Arnold is the highest flagged DB in the league right now, I believe. If not, that was just some. He's close to the top. I do know that. For their offense, I could see this being one of those games that hits the over. I mean, the over right now is 52.5. I could see this game getting out of hand because both offenses are just going to that's going to be their only hope, in my personal opinion. Now, Aiden Hutchinson is playing out of his mind right now. So if Aiden has any way to disrupt, I know they still have a decent line in Dallas. I mean, that's everybody's recipes for success for their quarterback. You wish Chicago would take notes as a fan, but if Aiden Hutchinson's able to continue to play the way that he is and disrupt Dak from doing what he's doing, uh, I, I, I think the Lions could go in there and win this game. I mean, it's a 3-point spread. It can kind of go either way. Obviously, the favors with the Lions. Just I think there's more continuity with the Lions than there is the Cowboys this season. Cowboys obviously don't have a running back, as we've already stated. Zeke started to look good against the Cleveland Browns, and then week 2, you're just like, okay, he was playing the Cleveland Browns, and he does look better. Don't get me wrong. He looks like he's in shape. He looks like he's ready to play ball, but it's just he's not there, man. He's beat up. Dowdle is the main guy, and nobody even knew who he was. So overall, I would pick the Lions to go in and win this game.
Speaking of pass happy, you got Kirk Cousins coming off a 509-yard game, beating the Buccaneers. They go to Carolina. Atlanta's right now -6. I like the Falcons' defense. To come out and the Bears have a far better defense than the Falcons, but it's not like the Falcons are trash. They still have a really good defense. It's just the Bears are probably one of the better in the leagues.
Mm-hmm.
Can Cousins? We talked about this, me and Maul, after the game the next day after watching Cousins win. Is you want to sit back and you want to be like, guys, y'all got to hand the ball off to Bijan. Like, you
Yes.
have this thoroughbred, you're not using it. Kurt's throwing the ball over 50 times, but at the same time, they're winning, and it's hard to knock a team when they're winning. I just don't think it's sustainable. Do I think that it runs out this week against Carolina? No, just because Carolina does not have a defense and they really don't have an offense. If the Falcons can shut down Chuba Hubbard and limit their success rushing, and really you just making the Red Rocket beat you, I like the Falcons in the game. There's just not a lot to this Panthers team that I can sit back and be like, that's their. You give me the how did the Panthers win? And I'm like, well, does the Falcons bus get in an accident before the game and like they lose some star players? Because outside of that, I don't see a path to a Panthers victory in any game that's clear cut.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Yeah. So I'm just looking here because I was curious. You brought it up. I've got him on my fantasy team, and I know he's been very mid so far this season. I didn't realize it was this bad. Guess how many receiving yards and catches Bijan has this season?
Just receiving, not rushing?
Yeah, just receiving.
So let's say that he has maybe 10 catches and maybe 100 yards.
Zero.
Zero?
Zero. Yeah, he's not even going out to the flat and getting the rock, like out in
That's
open
shocking.
space. Yeah, exactly. Because I felt like their bread and butter with Ritter. When they weren't handing it off, they were throwing him, just the dump pass to the flat and letting him get in open space one-on-one, and I look at him running the ball. He's only got 285 yards, on 67 carries. Like, I agree with what you're saying. He's completely being underutilized for who he was last season, and I mean they're essentially wasting a player, in my opinion, and I'm sure many people have the same testament. But yeah, just like you said, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, dude. The Carolina Panthers are terrible. Andy Dalton's just playing, his final days, enjoying the fact that he gets to start again in the NFL because he can't hang it up. For whatever reason, Andy Dalton's pretty much been done since he was with the Bengals, but he hasn't been able to hang it up, and teams keep taking a bet on him. So I don't blame him for going back there and just letting the thing fly. But with that comes the higher interceptions, and I was going to make a note of that too. Kirk is almost 1-for-1 with touchdowns and interceptions right now. So we're still seeing the same old Kirk, and it's like, well, is he going to take care of the ball? Uh, or is he going to continue to throw interceptions? I think that's the one piece where uh, Carolina can stay in the game is just Kirk making Kirk throws. To had no business throwing it to a guy, and ends up throwing it right to a receiver, or excuse me, a DB. But all that being said, there's no way. I shouldn't say no way, but Atlanta's going to win this game.
You talk about why he won't hang it up. Here's why he won't hang it up.
Money.
Dalton signed a 2-year, $10 million deal with the Panthers, including $8 million guaranteed. You can give me CTE for $8 million guaranteed. Like, that'd be hard to turn down. Like, I always think of that Daniel Tosh joke where he was making fun of Favre for keeping playing. He's like, "Do you know how much a practice squad makes?
Mm-hmm.
$500,000. Yeah, sign me up. Like, if you allow me to play and I'm getting paid, especially when you look at 2 years, 10 million now after tax, he's only keeping about half of it, but still $5 million in 2 years post tax. There's a lot of things I would do to my body in order to make $5 million, and getting obliterated behind that Panthers offensive line, I'd probably take that deal. Sunday night, Bengals versus the Giants. You get the Bengals 1-4, can't find a way to win a game. The Giants, who here lately have looked pretty good, especially you think about, they really fought Dallas pretty well. If Neighbors doesn't get concussed there at the end, they may go down and win that game, tie it up at least, come back. They go neighborless to Seattle and win. The Bengals team looks atrocious in terms of just being able to win. They had the game.
Yeah.
They had the game. And what drove me nuts is that Burrow has 5 touchdown passes. Lamar fumbles in overtime. And how many times do you run it before kicking or pass it? Zero. You've run 3 straight times. In what I hate that. I hate it in college. I hate it in pros. It's like, we have a kicker. Even Justin Tucker's missed some this year.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what helps? Being shorter distance. Like, if you can, I will take the chance and throw and possibly draw an offensive holding or something. You get that just as easy as you do on a run. I just don't understand why they couldn't advance the ball further. Burrow was lighting up the Ravens. They could not stop Jamar Chase to save their life that day. And then you ran it 3 straight times. That it blew my mind.
Well, what was that? That meme that they came out with this whole season is being drunk. Joe Burrow has 12 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions, and somehow is 1-4. Like, are you kidding me? Like, dude's playing lights out, and they're still losing.
Have you? See on your phone. Is Neighbors projected to play this week?
No,
or is
he's on my fantasy team. He's still out.
Still out. So it'll be interesting. Danny Dimes has looked better. He's certainly not the worst quarterback in the league right now. I'm not saying he's not close to it. As long as Will Levis is still starting out there, then I would probably give it to
a lot. He's questionable.
So if he plays, I would be leaning towards the Giants, just because Cincy's defense isn't great.
But if the Giants' defensive line plays how they did last week, getting all that pressure on Geno, good luck. I mean, Joe's already at a disadvantage, and his only hope is Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So he's got to get that ball out of his hand. And if he's waiting for them to get downfield, in between the corner and the safety, playing over the top, like, that takes time, for the receiver to get down there. Like, Joe doesn't have that time. And if Burns and Lawrence play how they did last week,
Well,
Joe's getting murdered.
you bring it up, and it is the. I apologize for making it sound like Neighbors is the key. The reason the Giants have been winning games is that defensive line.
Yeah.
Thibodeau, Lawrence, and Burns have been wrecking shop. And as we always say, trenches win football games. That's what kept them in there with Dallas, because Burns and all those guys were just getting the DAC. And that's the biggest worry I have for the Bengals is we know the Bengals line's not good. So if there's a team that they could have some major struggles against, Cincy's minus 3.5 point favorite right now, but I sit back and I go, good luck, because if y'all can't pass block, Giants going to eat him alive.
And I'm looking how the Giants started the season. They lost by 3 points. They lost by a field goal to the Commanders. So based on who the Commanders are today, that's not a bad loss. Now they got 28-6 by the Vikings opening week, which looked pretty bad. But besides that, they barely lost to the Cowboys, and then they beat the Browns, they beat the Seahawks. This is a team, and I think they're starting to finally gel. I don't know if it's enough for Daboll to keep his job. We can see how they do, with another quarter of the season gone through and reevaluate how we stand. But I think the Giants are finally starting to move in the right direction. I have more faith in them right now than I do the Jets.
Funny that you bring that up. That's our Monday night game. Bills, Jets. So you've got, freshly fired Saleh being sent home packing. Can't talk to the players, can't talk to anybody. We're going to escort you out of this facility like a felon. And on the other side, you got a Bills team that hasn't won in 2 weeks.
A fully concussed Josh Allen.
Yeah, oh, yeah. My man was knocked out, and they put him right back in that game.
You cannot tell me that he didn't have a concussion.
He reminds me of Favre.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a great way. My man does not want to come out the game, will play hurt. I know he went in the tent, and it's don't get me wrong, those guys probably know the answers to the concussion test that, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Oh, okay, well, I can pass these basic things. And as long as I wasn't laying there like Tua with my fingers scrunched up, there was some question. I think everyone realizes he probably had a mild concussion. It wasn't as severe as we've seen other players have. But my question for the Bills is my buddy said this a few weeks ago. Huge Bills fan. They're 3-0, and then they go play the Ravens. And it was we've beat bad teams. Can we finally beat a good team? The answer to that riddle was no. Then they play Houston, another good team. Can we beat them?
No.
They should have.
They should have. You're right. They should have.
And they had the worst game management I've seen. With a minute to go in your own end zone, they don't run the ball one time. They give Houston all their timeouts. They can't get a first down. They end up punting. And Houston is thank you for the awesome field position and 3 timeouts. Here's the game.
But let's be honest, too. Josh Allen couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. He was 9 for 30.
Well, my man didn't know which receiver
yards.
to throw to, seeing the double. The Bills, this is a chance that I believe the Jets are a bad team. They're certainly not playing good football right now. This is the Bills' chance to win, because the issue of losing this game it means more to the Bills right now than it does the Jets, in my opinion. The Jets have the best chance of moving up in terms of just progressing and getting better. It being a divisional game, you look at the other two teams, this is for the division. Jets and Bills.
Yeah.
Dolphins ain't winning.
No.
I can tell you that right now.
Patriots are going too.
Yeah, Patriots are going too. It's between the Jets and the Bills. Who can win these division games is going to determine who wins that division. So it is a gigantic game for both. The Bills are reeling. The Jets just fired their head coach. And when you do that, it's sort of like when Carolina benched Bryce Young, is you don't know what type of spark you're going to get. Sort of like the Raiders last year with McDaniels.
Yeah.
I can tell you one thing, the defense for the Jets certainly wasn't motivated for the last 5 weeks. Total different team than we had seen the previous year. Something was going on. Does this change things? I don't know. But from a standpoint of who I think wins, I like the Jets just because of Rodgers.
Yeah.
it's hard to bet against them. I look at the Bills, they're down Shakur. They have James Cook, who's been running the ball really well, but I don't know how I feel about the Bills. They should win this game. They're favored by 2.5, but in terms of who I think wins the game, I sort of like the Jets. What about you?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. My only question mark is Aaron Rodgers. You know, you saw his ankle get folded up last week in London. He's still dealing with that. They said it's optimistic, but I mean, it really depends on if he's able to plant because it was his left ankle, so that's his follow through foot. You know, so hard to tell. You know how that's going to go. But the Buffalo Bills, obviously Josh Allen's concussed. You can't tell me any different. You got Shakir down. James Cook is questionable. Curtis Samuel's questionable. Ed Oliver's questionable. Von Miller's suspended. You know, like there's a lot of holes in this team from their starters that just aren't there. And this is where, you know, I'm not saying that the Jets are going to come out and blow them out, but I could see the Jets definitely pulling the upset on this game, regardless. I would assume that Tyrod Taylor would put together a pretty good game too if Aaron Rodgers is unable to play. Josh Allen being concussed, obviously, if you had to go Tyrod Taylor versus Mitch Trubisky, it would be the greatest Thursday night game comparison of the season because we know we're not going to get anything out of the offenses, but you would think based on the players that they have, the Jets would be able to walk away with it if that's what we saw. So give me the Jets. That's who I'm going to go with. We'll see if Albright, I think is his name, the DC that's now becoming the head coach. Maybe they wanted to play for him instead of Saleh, but it seems like the general consensus is everybody was blindsided by this firing. So it's kind of unknown how this team's going to perform under new leadership.
It's unknown, but not to attack Saleh, there was one thing I noticed. It, we're going to film the college episode next. It reminded me a lot of Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
There was no changes made to that defense. We saw it week 1 and through the first 5 weeks of the season, which I get. They lost to an undefeated Vikings team. I would almost say that was expected going into the game. But from a defensive standpoint of how close games were last year with Zach Wilson, and you looked at the defensive efficiencies of last year,
Yep.
going into this season, you were like, oh, if there's anything that we really only have questions about, it's this offense. I have questions about the wide receivers. Rodgers is slinging it. Yes, he throws 3 picks. Every quarterback, I don't care. What's funny is we'll throw Rodgers underneath the bus, but then Mahomes will go out and throw 3 of the worst interceptions you've ever seen. It's just that he's got the refs throwing a flag for, phantom pass interference
Well,
that saves him.
and that's the thing. Up until this week, did you see the comparison? Him and Jalen Hurts are literally, tens of yards away from each other. Their completion percentage is about the same. The picks to touchdowns is, I think, identical.
Who's the
And
comparison, Rodgers and Jalen, or
no,
Mahomes and
Jalen and Mahomes.
Okay.
And they're like, Mahomes generational, da 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 da. Jalen Hurts trash. And it's just like, well, obviously you got to look at the team, and who they're playing for. But it is funny how we skew who it is and what kind of representation they get.
The difference between Mahomes, since the Chiefs are on a bye this week, I can just address this, and Jalen is Mahomes knows when to run, and he does a fantastic. He looks like a kid that grabbed the remote that's running away from you. Like at no point should he be gaining the first down, but he always does. Like he'll pump fake 10 yards down the field and get some DB to jump out of their socks, and I'm like, finally someone did lay the wood, which I was surprised because I was expecting the flag. Your text sent it out and was like, I'm sort of surprised they didn't flag it there, even though he's totally legal to be killed. I do think that Mahomes is going to have to learn how to slide like that because eventually, I'm telling you, teams, they're going to start saying, no, dog, if he runs, murder him. If he's in bounds, take your shot because we're not going to get a lot. And if you allow him to run, he's going to. On back to the Bills-Jets game, that's a poor thing for Allen. Like you look at the comparison, Mahomes draws a lot of flags when he gets hit. Allen, they just sort of, it's almost like the Cam Newton effect that it's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, he's a bigger guy. He can take it. So we're not going to flag. Like he can take this type of punishment. Clearly last week, he took a pretty good shot and had him rattled. We'll see how it goes. But until every team is getting the equal amount of defensive pass interferences that the Chiefs get every week, and some just, they were even showing it like they called a holding penalty on a defensive lineman for the Saints. It gave the Chiefs a first down on third down, and you go back and look, and it's like, you show me the holding on defensive line, and I'll hand you $1 million, because no one held at all. There was not even a jersey pulled, especially the guy that they called it on.
Yep.
I think touched him for all of a second. So there's a lot of questions about the efficacy of NFL refs right now, which seems to be a trend for the past like decade or so.
100%.
So outside of that, you got anything else?
No.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll check back in with our college episode here in a little bit. Thanks for tuning in.